Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Courtside Soundoff podcast. Today, I'm Josh Evanoff. He's Angel Ortega. First podcast of 2020. A lot of stuff to talk about, most of which will be focused on our 2019 awards, and we're also going to throw out our awards for the decade, 2010 to 2019, the whole thing. But first, we get into that. We have some MMA stuff to talk about. There was some UFC, which we did not talk about because we were on holiday break last week. That being the UFC Busan card from Busan, South Korea. In the main event, Chan Sung Jung dominates, brutally finishes Frankie Edgar inside the first round with punches. There was not a single moment of that fight that was competitive, making a damn good case that he deserved that title shot next, possibly facing the winner of, the rematch between Holloway and Volkanovski. I'd like to see him face Zabit Magomedsharipov. In the meantime, we'll see if that happens. Angel, I know you didn't really, I don't know if you saw this one. I'm pretty sure you probably saw the highlights of some, but do you have anything to take away from, Chan Sung Jung's big win? The Korean zombie?
Dude, it was a brutal, loss for Frankie. That's the one I want to see. What is that, back-to-back losses now in the year?
Actually, I think it's he's lost 3 of his last 4, I think.
So 3 back-to-back like that. What was it? I don't remember the first one, but obviously the middle one was Max, right? And then this one now with the Korean zombie.
Yeah.
I mean, Max just wrecked the man. I mean, it wasn't compared to anything to this one right now, but it was not a good look. Let's put it like that. It looked terrible. It was, like you said, there wasn't a moment of the fight. It was competitive. Just the zombie just laid it on him, just mobbed him and ended him. And I didn't expect that. When I looked at that, obviously before I didn't get to see the whole fight, but I went on Google, look at the UFC thing, and look at the whole recap, and I see that it ended within the first round. I was like, oh, it was within the first round, right?
Yep.
I remember right. It ended within the first round. I was just surprised. I was in disbelief. I thought it was being at least somewhere more competitive or last a little longer, but it didn't end up being like that. And then I looked at the highlights, and I just saw the just constant pressure coming at this man.
Yeah, he got absolutely murked. It wasn't. I mean, I thought Korean Zombie was going to win, but there was not even a moment that Frankie was competitive. I don't know if he landed a glove on him. So, other stuff really, I mean, this card wasn't that amazing. I thought that the co-main event was probably one of the better fights on the card. The co-main and the fight before that, Volkan Oezdemir got a split decision win over Alexander Rakic. I know a lot of people thought Rakic won. I thought Volkan deserved the win here. Volkan, obviously second win in a row, getting back in that title picture, so good for him. But Rakic, I believe that is his first or second career loss, first one in the UFC, I know for a fact. Fight before that was the return of Doo-Ho Choi, the Korean Superboy. Very much excited for him, although after a dominant first round, he would lose via shocking TKO in the second to Charles Jourdain. That was fight of the night, third straight fight I believe in every single one of his fights. There's been a performance given out, a bonus. 2 or 3 performance of the nights, and his last 3 fights have all been fight of the night. This one deserved it as well. That's all to talk about for UFC Busan, and that's all to talk about for UFC for, the past couple of weeks. Next UFC card is not until, January 18th, Conor versus Cowboy. We will give you guys all the coverage whenever that weekend rolls around in about 2 weeks from now. But there was a big Bellator card. Bellator Japan. There was a Ryzen card that I thought was violence personified. But for the sake of this podcast, we are only going to be talking about the Bellator card. Mostly because the main event was Fedor Emelianenko, in my opinion, the greatest fighter of all time, knocking out Quentin Rampage Jackson with one point. He didn't knock him out, but it was still, he just one shot at him. Rampage went down. A lot of criticism given to Rampage for his performance and also his shape. Rampage Jackson has now become Handpage Jackson, and he weighed in at 265 for this fight. I remember back on The Ultimate Fighter, he was making fun of this guy. I used to call him Titties because he had some man boobs going on. Quentin Jackson has now completed the full cycle to becoming Titties. So he's now he said after the fight he's going to come in better shape, and he said he actually lost 20 pounds for the Fedor fight. So that's very, very sad. Angel, what do you make of Fedor still having hands at 43 and Rampage's shape at 42?
Dude, Rampage came in fat. Like when I threw on the fight, luckily I went on Twitter and you reminded me. And even to message me, I just saw your tweet like, oh snap, Fedor versus Rampage is about to go down. I instantly opened up the zone, and then bam, I just see the camera's right on Rampage, and I'm like, oh damn, Rampage looks like he's ready to kill. Then it pans out to his body, and I was like, he's ready to kill a Big Mac. And then it pans to Fedor, and Fedor's, back and forth, focus, doing his Fedor thing. Looking like Fedor. And I'm like, I know the outcome of this. But I did not think it'd be like that. I was like, maybe he's on some, he just wants to go for that one, just that one punch. But no, that was not the case, man. He laid it on this man nicely with the hands, just catching him left and right, with each hand. And it ended in the demise of Rampage. I thought it was going to be a lot more competitive. I was a lot more excited for the fight. But it's still entertaining because it was a finish. But it did not go the way I expected. And I did not expect Rampage to be in the shape that he was in.
Yeah, definitely disappointing. I saw the walkout, and they had the woman from Pride. I think her name is Lene, I don't know how to say her last name, Harday or something like that. She was doing that, and they had like a Pride style walkout. It was in a big stadium. Like, this is getting Pride vibes. I'm getting some Pride vibes. Like, I was hyped, and then Rampage shook off his hoodie that he was wearing, and I'm like, oh, he did not train for this at all. Like, it was kind of sad, because I actually picked Rampage to win that fight. I thought that, Fedor is mostly shot, and that's not being mean. That's not being mean. Fedor just doesn't have much of a chin anymore. That's just the truth. But, listen, Fedor got the win. He still got some hands. His hand speed is so fast. It was awesome to see. This card had a couple of other good fights on there. Michael Chandler, probably the greatest Bellator fighter of all time, the greatest grown talent, knocking out Sidney Outlaw. That was originally supposed to be a Benson Henderson rematch, which I still want to see. But regardless, a good win for Chandler. And then before that, Michael Page knocking out Shinzo and Anzai with a punch in the second round after dominating him. People have this problem of saying that, just because they don't know their name, they're instantly a can if Michael Page fights them, which I don't necessarily like. Shinzo and Zai is a very good fighter. His record isn't the most impressive, I think, going to that fight. I think he was 11-3, but still, the guy's a former UFC veteran, former Pancrase champion. Just because you don't know a guy's name doesn't mean he's a can. And that's to some of I just want to do that really quick public service announcement. You can say his other two fights are cans, but Shinzo and Zai is a legit fighter. So give credit to Michael Page where it's due. He dominated that one, so that was a good performance. Now, the Soundoff Awards. Now, this is an idea that we talked about, I think, 2 weeks ago on the podcast, but now we're finally doing it. 2019 has come to an end, and with the end of 2019 comes the end of the decade. So we're going to be doing end of the decade talk at the end, but for right now, we're going to be talking our top 3 MMA fights of the year, top 3 boxing matches of the year, event of the year, female fighter of the year, boxer of the year, male fighter of the year, and all the stuff that goes along with that. Starting off with the top 3 mixed martial arts fights of the year. Angel, do you want to go first, or should I, man?
I mean, should we go particular order or no particular order, or should we just lay it out?
I was thinking we could just do I think you could give your top 3, and then I could give my top 3, and we could just go something like that.
Okay, so this is a controversial one, but I liked it because it was really good for what it lasted for. It just didn't end how I wanted to. Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis was one of my favorite fights this year. It was stopped by the doctor. We're not stopped by the doctor. It was stopped by the corner, right, if I remember right, because of the broken hand.
Yeah.
But, dude, did I have fun watching that fight? It was bloody. It was competitive. It had everything I liked. It was wild. There was spitting shit. And, around here, and this is on the Courtside Soundoff podcast, we love our spitting shit.
We do love spitting shit here.
And that was some of the best. It was great. I loved it. I had fun. I didn't get to it through, and I love to see that rematch. It's probably never going to happen, but God, do I love it.
It was an awesome fight for sure. Is that your number 3, or is that your?
I'd probably say I put that at. I'd probably say that's number 3 since it wasn't like a whole fight. You know, like
Sense.
it wasn't seen through all the way.
That makes sense.
And then followed by that, I have Izzy. Honestly, I wish I could put all 3 of Izzy's fights in just one category, but I'm not. I guess I'll put Izzy versus Kelvin. Izzy versus Kelvin was so entertaining to me. I had so much fun with it. It was right before his big step to Robert at the end of the year. And dude, I mean, it was a close ass fight. I mean, at some points I thought Kelvin could have taken it, you know, and maybe gone for some bigger stuff. And then obviously Israel looked really good, and you know, obviously Kelvin not looking like the craziest guy at his weight class, but still putting it on Izzy, the taller man. I mean, I thought it was great.
For sure.
And then, I mean, I guess for number 1, oh man, I'm gonna throw that fight that was on that same card, Max versus Dustin.
Max Dustin fight of the year?
For me, I had a lot of fun watching. There was a lot of fights I think I could put, or a lot of fights that I could put on that list. I'm pretty sure I can take some out, put some in. Because there was a lot of good fights this year, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot of good fights. I mean, but I had a lot of fun watching that because then what it led to, and I just love stories. I love storylines, love things that go on to other things. You know, I think that's why I like Izzy so much right now as a fighter because he likes stuff like that. So I think that was cool because then obviously Dustin went on to fight Habib. Max came back down, defended the title, lost it, probably gonna fight for it again this year. And I mean, it just made so much shit happen afterwards, and I just love that.
That's respectable. That's absolutely understandable. Mostly because my number 3 fight of the year for 2019 was Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. You just set the scene very, very, very perfectly. Obviously the main event of that card, and it was coming off the absolute war that was Israel and Gastelum. It was an awesome fight. I know that a lot of people seem to have an issue remembering that one. At least in my opinion, a lot of people seem to think that, you know, Max just got dominated. No, Max got dominated round 1. He came back round 2, started doing well, got rocked at the end. You know, and by the way, that started that first round. Dustin rocks Max, Max rocks Dustin, Dustin rocks Max even harder. Awesome fight, and the ending of just Dustin scratching and clawing to have to survive, because, not really survive, but he was trying to last, you know, because he was clearly starting to get gassed in that 5th round. And Max was coming back. It was an awesome war, and it was a war of attrition. Absolute amazing fight, and very surprising. A lot of people thought Max was going to get the win and face Habib. You know, Dustin Poirier coming in, shaking things up. Absolutely awesome fight, and it's my number 3 fight of the year. My number 2 fight of the year is a forgotten one. Brian Barberena taking on Vicente Luque at the first ESPN show of the year, February 17th. Main evented by Francis Ngannou and Cain Velasquez. This one was on the main card, second fight on the main card, absolute war. These guys just went back and forth for 3 rounds. They both got rocked multiple times. They both got knocked down multiple times. And in the final 10 seconds, Vicente Luque gets the TKO, dropping Barberena and lands some knees to get the knockout win. In the final 10 seconds, got the comeback win. He was going to lose that fight. And then obviously Luque would go on to win a couple more, facing Wonder Boy at the end of the year. And an awesome fight, but absolutely awesome fight. My number 2 on the year. And my fight of the year for 2019 is your second fight of the year. Obviously that being Israel Adesanya and Kelvin Gastelum. This is the one that got my heart pumping. It got just super, super intense. Both guys got rocked multiple times. I rewatched it yesterday because I was rewatching fights yesterday to kind of get my head thinking about, you know, who should be what and all that stuff. Absolutely amazing performance. Absolutely amazing fight. It's the fight of the year. It was Israel's coming out party and helped set the stage for the main event. So that's our top 3. And with that, we're gonna go straight into the top 3 boxing matches of the year. Angel, I'm gonna let you take the lead because I just went. So what do you got?
Oh, dude, oh man. Okay, so I'm having a hard time with this one, but I guess 100%. One of them for me is 100% one of Manny's fights this year. Manny had both his fights here, right? Against what's his name?
Broner and then Thurman.
Yeah, I liked both. I can make an argument for both, but I'll do Thurman because obviously Thurman was coming back. Title was what off that, if I remember right.
Yes.
And Manny's back. Manny's back in the conversation, so for me that was big. At 2, we finally got Sean Porter, Earl Spence, right? So I thought that was a big deal. Finally, top guys fighting top guys in that weight class. Still waiting for Bud, but we won't talk about that today. So that was, for me, that was another big one. And then obviously for me, the biggest, best fight of the year, just because of the storyline, what's happened, the saga, the ending, the comeback. AJ versus Andy won at MSG. I mean, upset, surprise, first Mexican heavyweight. AJ seen as the number one guy, losing to this guy who, out of shape, smaller, never been a Mexican heavyweight champion, and the way it ended, the constant damage, and then obviously we went on to have the rematch.
That's a very good pick. Very, very good pick. For some reason, that didn't cross my mind when coming into my top 3. I don't even know why. Just feels so long ago that fight happened. Because now, obviously,
it was a minute ago.
It was a minute ago, and it feels like a lot has changed. Because now, AJ's back to being champion. We're kind of just where we were at the start of 2019. But still, that's a good pick. My number 3, also going to be Pacquiao versus Thurman. Pacquiao coming out strong, getting the coming off the win over Broner, before that TKO over Matisse. And then he goes out, knocks down Thurman in round 1, and from there he starts dominating. Thurman comes back in the latter half of the fight, and it looks like Thurman's just going to get the win. But then in, I believe, the 9th or the 10th round, Pacquiao starts coming back. He takes some of those later rounds, ends up winning via split decision. I thought it was a clear win for Pacquiao. I don't know how you could give it to Thurman, but I still, regardless, the right man won, and it's setting the scene for 2020. And, Pacquiao's back in the conversation at the age of 41. The man's a champion. We'll get into, but he made his way into Boxer of the Year talk, which we'll get into we'll get into that later. You know what I mean? But still, awesome fight, and his win over Broner was a pretty good fight too. So I can see how you could put that one in there. But still, I thought the Thurman fight was way better. Number 2, Errol Spence versus Sean Porter. This fight was an absolute war. These dudes were looking like they were literally fighting for their lives in there. Just an absolutely amazing war of just attrition. And a lot of people thought Sean Porter was going to go in there and just get murked. That's what I thought. I mean, I don't know shit about boxing, but I thought Sean Porter was just going to go in there. I thought he was past his best. Instead, he goes out there and he gives Errol Spence an absolute war. I believe Errol won via split decision also.
It's closest fight.
Very, very close fight. Definitely. And then my number 1, Nonito Donaire versus, I say his name, Naoya Inoue, I believe.
Oh my god.
This fight was absolutely awesome, and it's one that, very surprised you didn't have it in your top 3. I don't know if you saw it, but this fight was absolutely amazing.
I'm aware of the fight, though. I'm aware of the circumstances. Wasn't that the more experienced, veteran Japanese boxer, right? If I remember right. And obviously him, the upcoming superstar with the fucking heavy-ass hands.
Yes,
at that weight class.
Heavy hands. It's like a truck for
I didn't watch that fight. I know I missed out on a banger though. I heard it was amazing.
It's an absolute banger. You should watch it on DAZN, my man. It was my match of the year when it came to boxing, and especially considering I thought Donaire was going to get just absolutely dominated because he's past his best. This is not 2012 Benito Donaire. This is 2019 Benito Donaire, and instead he went in there and he gave in a way his hardest challenge. So very, very surprising. But yeah, he got the win and he kind of made his statement as one of the best, probably the best in that weight class, and it's my match of the year. Now we're gonna move on to event of the year. Event of the year can span boxing and MMA, just overall combat sports. Event of the year, Angel, what do you got?
Oh man, dude! Just because of the sheer wildness of how it happened, because we didn't think you'd be there. I'd say AJ Andy too, because it was just in Saudi Arabia. The stadium was built, and I forgot what it was, like something like 42 days, something crazy like that. It's wild, man. I thought that was insane event was, at least for boxing.
For sure. That's a good pick. It's a very good pick. Now, mine is a controversial one. I went back and forth between, three events this year across, two sports. Obviously the other two were UFC 244 with Masvidal Diaz, Donald Trump was there, The Rock gave out the title, bangers all around, and then also BMF title. And then my other one I was thinking of was also Ruiz Joshua 2, the whole scene of Saudi Arabia, the stadium being built, all the hype heading into the rematch, Andy coming in fatter, excuse me. So definitely very, very wild. However, mine is a controversial one, and I am going with the event of the year as Logan Paul KSI 2.
Holy shit, I forgot that.
Yeah, you know what, man? Honestly, it deserves it. It had world champions on the undercard. It generated more hype for boxing this year than any other card I've seen, and that's not hyperbole. That's just the truth. Like, there was an insane amount of hype going in. It captured the mainstream attention. There was talk of like, is this the way boxing's gonna go now? Like, is this what's gonna happen? And honestly, it was an awesome night. I was heavily invested. You were as well. So that is my controversial event of the year.
I mean, I can't argue with you. That was a big, at least, event for us. And I mean, shit. I mean, even outside of media, I mean, you got Joe Rogan, ESPN, DAZN, big outlets talking about it. So, I mean, I think it's not even.
Eddie Hearn said it was the biggest event DAZN has done, like in terms of getting subscribers.
There you go.
So yeah, that was my event of the year. Now, moving on to Fighter of the Year talk. Female Fighter of the Year. This one seems straightforward for a lot of people, but I'm going to have a different pick than probably you, but who do you have for Female Fighter of the Year?
Oh, Weili Zhang.
Really?
I have Weili Zhang, yeah. They brought her in. I still theorize this shit was planned out. They brought her in, kicked ass, and they got her their title, and that's what happened. They had her event in China, and they made her way perfectly into China.
Wow. That's very much surprising because that's also who I picked for Female Fighter of the Year.
Came out of not even out of nowhere. I told you, I believe this shit was planned out.
Yeah, but you were like the only one. You were the only person I saw because I did not see anybody else saying Weili Zhang was going to be champ at the end of the year.
Well, I have no reason to it was not even just that. I mean, I never expected anything throughout the year though. She was in all these fights and then she ended up winning the title. It was just a perfect storm for her. And it's I have no reason to pick Amanda. I mean, Amanda did her Amanda thing, but it wasn't like Amanda already had the title. Yeah, she was challenged a little bit at her most recent fight. But outside of that, I had no other reason. And then, obviously, Valentina, same. I had no reason to pick Valentina. She did her thing. I mean, unless she fought Henry, then I see the argument.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I get the argument for Amanda, but honestly, expectations are a big thing when it comes to me for Fighter of the Year. Like, my expectations for you going into the year, and at the start of the year, I barely knew Weili Zhang's name. And she's my pick for Female Fighter of the Year because, nobody expected. You could say you called it, and you did call it. You did call your shot. But at the beginning of the year, she wasn't even ranked. She faced Tisha Torres on the main card, and a lot of people are like, why the fuck is this on the main card of UFC 235? She goes in, she dominates Tisha Torres, she gets a title shot out of nowhere. I remember people saying Michelle Waterson should have got the title shot. I said Michelle Waterson should have gotten the title shot. And then she goes there, and she murks Jessica Andrade in China, and nobody merged Jessica Andrade. She gets her ass kicked all the time. Okay, she takes a beating like nobody else I've ever seen. She has a chin made of adamantium, and Weili Zhang took 42 seconds to put her out cold. That's all I need to see, man. Props to Nunes, props to Shevchenko, but they didn't do things that were not unexpected of them. If anything, it was surprising to a lot of people that Amanda got challenged, which I guess speaks to how good she has been, but, definitely a disappointing performance for her, end of the year. And the Valentina Shevchenko, I mean, I say this with all due respect to these two fighters, but she beat Jessica Ai and Liz Carmouche. Carmouche is no longer in the UFC, and Jessica Ai was going to be cut before she moved down to flyweight. So,
Let me say this
Definitely.
though, dude. If Amanda would have had the Cyborg fight this year, it was on the 29th of last year, dude. If
It
she would have
was.
had Holly, Jermaine, and Cyborg all in the 1 year, that would have been insane.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have to give it to her then, but just due to literal year, the fact that it's a year, I gotta give it to Wei Li Chang.
I mean, she beat Jessica, who beat Rose, and then a crazy ending with the fucking slam onto the canvas.
Yeah, man. So, and if Jessica Andrade won that, I probably would have given it to Andrade because I didn't expect Andrade to be champ at all. But
Shit, but then at the same time, we still have the same president for Wei Li, even then.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's a wild year.
it's definitely a wild year. And now we're gonna move on to Boxer of the Year. Boxer of the Year does not have as many candidates as MMA Fighter of the Year, but you can make tons of different cases. Make your case for Boxer of the Year, Angel?
Oh man, honestly, I'm gonna give it to Manny, bro. I'm gonna give it to Manny. Like, I really wanted to argue for Canelo. I really wanted to argue for. I mean, honestly, if Tyson would have fought better competition, I would give it to Tyson. Wilder, he's fought guys up there, but it's not the Adam Kawanakis, the more challenging guys up at that echelon, the Povetkin's, those guys, I think, and then we could have given it to Deontay, but when Deontay's just murking motherfuckers out here with the 1-2. I would want to give it to an up and comer, but even then, it's I wanted to give it to Jaime, because Jaime made, came up, won his title, got his title shot, but I still think he's too young and still needs, more fights under his belt to give it to him. Obviously, Canelo, great year, beat DJ, beat Sergey, both amazing wins, obviously one at a different weight class, and then DJ obviously now fighting at super middleweight, almost heavy, light heavyweight or cruiserweight or wherever they were fighting at now. So, that's that. But I want to give it to Manny. Just the story, the age, the comeback, the everything, and he's back in that conversation. And I think Manny's a really big name in boxing. He attracts a lot of people from a lot of different groups. I think for me, he's fighter of the year just because of what's happened now up to him. Obviously, and I think a lot of people will agree with me. But it's really hard to make an argument for fighter of the year. Because a lot of boxers don't fight a lot in a year. A lot of boxers don't accomplish a lot in 1 year.
Yeah.
And I think out of all the guys I can think of, I feel like Manny's done the most in 1 year. There's not really anybody who I feel like is even close to what he did in the year for his story.
Yeah, it's really all about the story, because typically in boxing they only fight once or twice a year, whereas MMA it's 3-4 times. So for that, I'm also giving it to Manny Pacquiao. I see most people giving it to Canelo, but my big hang up with Canelo is kind of this wasn't unexpected for Canelo. He was heavy favorites going into, obviously, I don't think he was a heavy favorite, but he was a favorite going into both the Daniel Jacobs win and the Sergey Kovalev win. And a lot of people saw how close the Jacobs win was, or if Jacobs made 1 or 2 adjustments, he gets the win. And obviously he had to come from behind to beat Kovalev. A lot of people had Kovalev winning, including myself, until that 11th round. But that Kovalev fight was absolutely kind of a complete sleeper until then. So, the unexpectedness of Pacquiao coming back, obviously he beat Matisse the previous year, but before that he lost to Jeff Horn, and a lot of things, a lot of circumstances, and then he beat Broner, which wasn't unexpected. I don't see a whole lot of people pricking Broner. I know Manny was
people had
favorite.
faith in Broner though.
They did, but the Hood knows that Broner won that fight, so he got robbed. The Hood knows. So, but even that going into the Thurman fight, a lot of people didn't think Manny was going to win. I thought Manny was going to get the win, but a lot of people were picking Thurman because he's the younger guy. He's undefeated. He's the WBA welterweight champ, former WBC welterweight champ. And you know what, man? He goes out, he beats the young lion. Whenever he was in his prime, he was beating legends, and now he's a legend and he's beating the prime. So Manny Pacquiao is my greatest. He's the boxer of the year for me. Runner up was probably Deontay or Canelo.
Oh yeah. And dude, honestly, we can make an argument and we talked about it earlier for Sean, and Earl.
Definitely.
I mean, both those guys had just crazy years in and of itself. I mean, obviously more Earl because how it ended. I mean, I still think Sean had a good year for what it was worth because he fought relevancy. He had his title. I mean, he beat Jordanis. However you say the name in the year, there's a high name up there. And he fought Earl, but didn't win. And if things go differently, I think maybe he's in it. But I mean, Earl definitely in the conversation. Beat Mikey, beat Sean Porter. So that was a big deal too. And then, and credit to Loma too. I mean, he beat two top guys in this weight class. He beat Luke and Anthony. Like, there's a lot of good guys, but it's there's a lot of story in boxing.
Definitely.
And I'm sure there's stuff that went down at these lower weight classes that we probably missed out on. Because, I mean, a lot of these lower weight classes don't get a lot of love, but I'm sure, whoever down there had an amazing year as well. It's just at least for when it comes to media, big media, I mean, the upper weight classes are the things that always are going to appreciate the most love, or get the most love.
Definitely. So, with that, we move to our last of the year award to give out, and it is Male Fighter of the Year. A lot of candidates for this one. I've seen like 3 to 4 names thrown around there. But Angel, who do you got?
Talking male MMA fighter or male like boxer? Like, what are we doing here? We're doing both. Cause wait, we just gave our we gave our boxer of the year. My bad. Lost my train of thought. But for male fighter of the year, I gotta give it to Izzy, man. Izzy won the title. Izzy fought multiple times within the year. He looked great. He showed all his skills. He was an entertaining guy. He's what the sport needs right now in the UFC. Hey man, he's a memer. He gets it. He's with the youth. I think that's what's up, man. And I mean, man, what an entertaining guy. And I mean, in this year, he has a big year ahead of him, and I hope he's focused. He takes advantage of it. And I don't think Izzy's gonna get lost at all. I think Izzy's in the right mindset.
Yeah. Anyway, God damn it. I keep on losing my voice. It sucks. My fighter of the year is one that is like I said, it all comes to expectations for me personally. And my expectation going into the year was guys like, Cejudo was going to be it. He was already champ, Izzy was a top 5 guy going into the year, and he beat the great competition, Anderson, Gastelum, and Whittaker. But my fight of the year is one that nobody expected. I don't want to say nobody cared, but nobody went into 2019 thinking that Jorge Masvidal was going to end the year as one of the top stars. Not only top stars, but he's the clear number 1 contender as well right now, welterweight. He got 3 knockout wins. Darren Till over in London, stopping the Ben Askren hype train in 5 seconds. It's probably the knockout of the year at UFC 239, and then dominating Nate Diaz. He became such a star that they created a fake championship for him to win at UFC 244. They literally got there was so much hype for that fight. The president was there. The Rock was there. So I got to give it to Jorge, man, because going into that year, nobody even expected it. He was on a 2-fight losing streak. And then he took over a year off from MMA, and he just came back and started wrecking fools. So, absolutely insane. And he ends the year as one of the biggest stars in MMA. Like, you can argue Conor and who else? Like, who is ahead of Jorge Masvidal as one of the biggest stars right now in MMA? No one.
Oh, no. So, there's very few guys.
He gets my fight of the year just for sheer shock value. I don't think anybody expected it. So
all he needs is that title shot now. Sadly, that's not.
We're going to move on to our of the decade awards, and we're going to do a bit of a turn. We're going to do the NBA because we haven't really talked about NBA year related stuff, considering NBA seasons are weird because they lap over in 2 years. But who is your player of the decade?
Player of the decade? Controversially, I'm sure I'm picking Steph Curry. I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate for that, but throughout obviously, Steph had changed the game for everybody. Steph with the 3-point shot made I mean, even high school, college level. I mean, Trae Young, I mean, making it to the league. I mean, he said he wanted to be a Steph Curry-esque type player, and I mean, just into that himself. Just, I think influencing and all that is a big deal to me. MVP, all moving up his way all time, 3-point scoring list and 3-point percentages and all the 3-point records, NBA champion, and obviously cementing himself in the league as one of the best guards of all time. I mean, people have him now in top 5 guards of all time, and I mean, they're talking likes of, Magic, Gary Payton, there's just a bunch of names you could throw out there. And now he's in that conversation for one of the best guards of all time. And I gotta give it to Steph, man. I mean, from when he made it in the league until now, I mean, he's hurt right now. I mean, he's just made such a big influence. And there's a lot of guys you could give this to. There's a lot of guys who've changed the game. But I mean, Steph's been there for a minute now, and he's made a big impact on the NBA and outside of the NBA. I mean, he's made this cultural movement with the 3-ball.
That's not a bad pick, and personally, I would have Steph probably at number 3. If you're doing a top 3 list, I'd put Steph at number 3. My number 2 probably being Kevin Durant, but number 1's got to be LeBron James. I got to go with LeBron. Won the chip 3 times in this decade. Overall, he elevated himself into being that consensus number 1 or number 2. There's no more debate anymore. You can be like, he's not even top 5, if you don't know shit about basketball. But I don't know, man. He elevated himself past Kobe. He elevated himself past a lot of guys in this decade, and he solidified himself as one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Steph revolutionized the game, but I just got to go with LeBron. And so
he's immortalized, man.
He is, and this decade had a lot to do with that. Like, he was on the come up in the early 2000s, but and he solidified himself as the best player in the league by the end of the early 2000s. But it was in this decade that he actually started winning championships and gave Cleveland the ring and all that stuff. So now we're going to move on to the team of the decade. By team of the decade, we mean what is the best team overall of the decade, and then we're going to do some all NBA, like by position stuff. But Angel, this one's pretty clear. Who's your team of the decade?
I'm picking Golden State, not the one with KD, the one before KD with Clay, Draymond, Steph, Iggy, and then, so on and so forth on the team. No hate to no one I mentioned. Sean Livingston, not retired. I mean, that team, they won before KD was there. They won after KD was there. All-time record in the NBA, guys on there, all-stars, record setters, so on and so forth, immortalized themselves in the league. One of the most dominant teams to ever play in the NBA, up there with the Bulls, Scottie, Jordan, Dennis, Tony Kukoc, so on and so forth. Obviously all the Celtic, teams, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Scalabrine, throw some love to the White Mamba.
The White Mamba.
Banana Boat, Miami Heat, Braun, Wade, Bosh. It's insane, man. One of the greatest teams we've ever seen play in NBA. That's the team of the decade. I'll leave it at that. I want you to obviously announce yourself as well, which I don't think there'll be too much difference.
Yeah, my team of the decade is the Golden State Warriors with KD. I think that team's the greatest team of all time. I don't think 2017 Warriors, I think the 2018 Warriors have fallen off a bit. But the 2017 Warriors, I don't think anybody beats them. People forget that how good the 2017 Warriors were is that they completely dominated the Cavs in a 5-game series. And the Cavs going into that game are probably one of the greatest teams that ever won a title. People forget that team was better than the 2016 team that beat Golden State. But obviously with KD, 4 All-Stars, I don't think anybody beats him. And I think if the 2019 Warriors were healthy, like on paper, they're even better than the 2017, but obviously they weren't healthy, so they just pretty much disqualified and they didn't win. But, fun runner-up would probably be that 2017 Cavs team and 2016 Cavs. 2019 Raptors I'm a big fan of. So there's some teams to throw in there. But, with that, we're going to go to the All-NBA decade. They give out All-NBA awards, like just by position every single year. But we're doing it by the decade. Definitely, a couple of these are super clear. Some of these are not. Angel, start off with your All-NBA decade list.
Oh, man, at point guard, Steph Curry. Great guys in the league. Obviously, I said my due with Curry, I gave him player of the decade just because of the influence that he had on the game. At shooting guard, James Harden, putting up monstrous numbers, still doing it now this season. Do we consider LeBron a small forward, power forward, point guard, or shooting guard, or center in this world?
I consider him power forward.
Okay, we'll leave him power forward. He's listed as small forward, though, I think.
Well, shit.
I don't know. Well, just for the sake of it, we'll do LeBron small forward just so I can do this. LeBron small forward, KD power forward. Center is very hard, for me at least. I'm gonna pick Tim Duncan, even though he didn't have, the greatest ending to when he left. I think a lot of the good centers now in the league are just young guys. Embiid, great. No hate to Embiid. If not, I put Embiid there, but Embiid just hasn't been in the league for that long in this decade and hasn't even played that long within this decade. AD, I see the argument, but I don't want to give it to AD because AD got drafted a little bit more after. Timmy played in the league for a while. At his age, still put up, good numbers, good performances. All-star for a good amount of the time, defensive player, all these dominations. So that was my team of the decade.
Absolutely. I actually have the same exact team as you do. Steph, point guard, James Harden, shooting guard, LeBron, small forward, KD, power forward, and Tim Duncan at center. Timmy, he left about halfway through, but none of those other guys solidified themselves more than Tim Duncan did. And even whenever he retired, he was still in the upper half of centers in the league. Other guys, like, Joel, he had a really good couple of years. AD's a nice pick, but he spent a lot of this decade at power forward, as well. And, a guy that I talked about with you before the podcast even started was Dwight at, just for longevity reasons, and he was really productive starting the decade, kind of meh around the middle, but by the end of the decade, he's kind of putting himself more in that discussion as being a really great center. I personally always thought Dwight was a great center, but also, a lot of people just kind of disrespected the guy because they didn't really personally like him, and, Kobe called him soft, so, that's a big part of it. And so with that, we move to the last of our decade discussions, and I'm not sure what order we're going to do this in, but I guess we can start off with we did a female one of the year. Let's do female fighter of the decade. Now, female fighting has only been around for about a decade, but Angel, who you got?
Oh man, I could go back and forth on this. I really want to give it to Ronda or Amanda. Obviously, Ronda had her exit, and then Amanda, obviously, the dominance, the names, the everything. It really comes down to what you like. Obviously, Ronda, the influence, she brought in a lot of eyes because of, her persona and what she had to offer. And then Amanda, obviously, just the sheer, greatness and dominance. I know, like we talked about it, female fighting hasn't been around that long, so there isn't too much, but I guess I'll give it to Amanda just because she's officially, go to herself. She will always be there. She will be always the first. She will always be one of the first people you think about when you talk about all-time great female fighters. And there's no hate to Ronda. Ronda did a splendid job of, showing the sport initially. Sadly, just not, I guess, adapting and getting better.
Yeah, you make a really good point. However, I'm still going to go with Ronda. I think that she kind of brought female fighting to the forefront, and without her doing that, who knows if we'd even be having this discussion. And also her dominance throughout, the decade can't be understated. Now, she lost to Nunes and she lost to Holly, but
all great fighters.
Great fighters, but also for me, I think what she did to revolutionize, fighting and bring it into the forefront and become, probably the third biggest fighter of all time. Like, pay-per-view buy wise, hype wise, I could really only see her behind Brock and Conor is the biggest fighters of all time. And she's a female who did that. And she's the only one who's put herself in that discussion to even be there. It's one of the biggest draws ever. So for me, it's Ronda Rousey. And also, I'm not, a lot of people hate her. Like, a lot of people straight up hate her, because of the way she exited the sport. But, I'm really taking that into consideration because, she lost 2 fights in top tier competition. That doesn't mean as much to me as her dominance at the start of it. So, with that, we're going to move to male fighter of the decade. This one, there's a lot of candidates. You could do so many different names. Angel, who you got?
I gotta pick Conor McGregor, man. Conor annihilated what we thought was possible in this sport, man. Obviously one of the big introductions for me. I remember hearing all the hype behind the Aldo fight, asking you about it, and then from that, I was introduced into the sport and I stayed in it. And then Conor, obviously, great fights he's given us in the UFC in that time. He fought Dustin, he fought Max. All of them young, still young in their career. Eddie fought Habib, fought Nate, and then he fought Floyd in a boxing match, doing the impossible crossover between sports that we never thought would happen. I think Conor is just it's very hard to argue against Conor and what he's done in this decade. Also owning his own whiskey company to top it off.
He also has his own brand of clothes, August McGregor. So, the guy is certainly the entrepreneur. I also have Conor McGregor as my fighter of the decade. Runner-up, probably Demetrius Johnson. DJ's dominance is unparalleled. However, and he also fought for the whole decade. I see a lot of people giving it to John Jones, but John Jones was inactive due to steroid violations about half of this decade. So, that plays a role for me. Conor McGregor, kind of a layup answer. Former featherweight champion, former lightweight champion. Dominance was unparalleled. His star power was just ridiculous. Even the Habib fight is the biggest UFC fight of all time. The Eddie fight, the Nate duo fights, some of the biggest fights of all time. Knocked out Jose Aldo, undefeated for 10 years and gone in 13 seconds. And obviously wins over Max Holloway, Poirier, Mendez. His resume was ridiculous. He fought Floyd Mayweather. The dude fought Floyd fucking Mayweather. That's how big of a story it was. He brought Floyd out of retirement and was arguably the A-side. So, full credit to the man. He's coming back in a couple of days, 16 days away from his return, and he was our fighter of the decade for the 2010s. Now, Boxer of the decade. Boxer of the decade. There's a lot. This is the last one, by the way. This is the last award to be given out by the Soundoff podcast. Obviously, the most reputable news source of all time. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people to go out there with. There's no wrong answer due to how many stars rose up at this decade. But, Angel, who do you got for your Boxer of the decade?
Man, is this a hard one. Let me tell you that. Because there's an argument for all the top guys right now. Because of all, people we brought up early in the podcast, Manny, Canelo, Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Joshua, all these guys were up there, man. We're talking about a whole group of people. I went, man, I don't know if I want to go off story or accomplishments or longevity or whatever. There's a big argument here for what I can do. I almost want to give it, man, I think, I'll give it to Canelo, man. Canelo is, in that time, obviously he got babied, he fought Floyd, he's fought Gennady, Sergey, obviously the number of different weight classes and championships, the entertainment, biggest name in the sport right now, the multi-million fight contract, the promotions, everything. It's a big deal when he fights. Still young in his prime now, entering his prime now as a boxer, and not even done yet. Over 50 fights, all ending in different crazy controversial, however you want to say it, ways. But something, when he fights, the world kind of stops for him, and it's kind of insane. I really want to, make an argument for Tyson, just because of the story, him battling with his problems and addiction, coming back, beating Klitschko, fighting Wilder, rebuilding himself, being a different positive guy. Manny, in that time period, obviously, fought Shane Mosley, fought, all these people, fought Floyd, came back, lost, won again. I mean, it's insane. I mean, there's a lot of guys here who have a lot of success, who are deserving of the award, but I'm just gonna give it to Canelo just because of the sheer accomplishments that had been done in that decade. That you can go look back at it, and I think he is the most, out of all the champions right now, he's the most accomplished in that decade.
That is a completely fair answer, and obviously his accomplishments. He's been a champion of multiple different weight classes. So many different things have happened that have made his story even better. And I went back and forth with my answer. Floyd Mayweather, obviously up there, but Floyd, obviously only fought typically once a year, and that was for about half the decade. He still had a lot of great wins. Deontay Wilder emerging as, he's putting himself in that conversation as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, mostly during the 2010s, due to, 10 title defenses in a row. He doesn't have all the names that somebody like Anthony Joshua has, but he doesn't have the loss that Anthony Joshua has. Tyson Fury, obviously, if there's a comeback, fighter of the decade, you could probably throw him in there. Obviously, still undefeated, beats Klitschko, has his issues, pops for steroids, gets super fat, doesn't fight, comes back after his suspension and a lot of other issues to kind of put himself in that conversation as the greatest heavyweight in the world. So many different answers, but I've got to go with Canelo Alvarez. I also got to go with Canelo. The dude emerged as one of the biggest stars on the planet. You said it best. You said that the world stops whenever he fights. No, not normally. He normally does. UFC 244 still a crazy scene with him sitting on the couch for an hour for that to end. But outside of that, the world just stopped whenever he fought. On pay-per-view, he's one of the biggest stars. And his resume is still ridiculous, just got guys all around, obviously he lost to Floyd, but, which, this is technically his only loss, and a lot of people I thought he lost to Gennady once, maybe twice, but still technically has a win over Gennady Golovkin, has a win over Shane Mosley, Austin Trout, Lara, Cotto, Khan, Smith, Chavez Jr. before he started, going completely off the rails. Daniel Jacobs that ends the decade with a knockout win over one of the greatest light heavyweights of the decade in Sergey Kovalev. The guy just put his stamp on the decade. Everywhere you look, he was a part of some of the biggest fights, and it's insane his kind of trajectory of becoming one of the biggest stars. So, definitely insane. Runner-up probably Floyd, but, that is all we have for the awards to give out. Angel, is there anything that we missed on this podcast that you would like to touch on?
No, not really. Not anything too crazy. Some sad news, obviously. Retirement of Zach Randolph coming this year. The passing of David Stern in the NBA, ex-commissioner prior to Adam Silver coming in. Stuff like that, obviously, going forward. Year has started. Big fights, big money events coming your way, Amazing content in the podcast. We're expecting a big year in all of our sports, NBA, MMA, and boxing. The content is going to be amazing at the start of the year. Hopefully it's like that throughout the whole year, because it's going to be our first it's going to be almost a year since we started the podcast, so that's kind of wild.
Definitely. This was a great year for the podcast. I say year, it'll be a year of the podcast, late February, early March. We did a lot this year. Our YouTube channel is currently taking off. We've got a couple couple thousand listeners out there. Decent following in the UK too, apparently. So, thank you guys for all of the support over the past 12 months. Took that step from podcast to totally, completely reputable news source, obviously. Covered the big three live. If they come back, we'll probably do it again. I know I would, but, definitely, yeah, definitely. And I know that they're coming out with their schedule soon, so we'll see if Kansas City makes the cut. Honestly, it was a good year, definitely a good decade. So if you guys like what you heard here and you want to hear more, go ahead and follow us on our, all of our platforms to find out more. YouTube, Courtside Soundoff Podcast, Spotify, Courtside Soundoff Podcast, available on anywhere that you can get, really podcasts, honestly. Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Podbean. If you listen anywhere else, you're kind of just weird. So, at Courtside Sound 1 on Twitter, Courtside Soundoff on Instagram, Facebook. I think I'm hitting everything at Angel Ortega _01 if you want to follow the boy Angel. And I'm at Josh Evanoff on Twitter. Hit 1,000 followers this year, so that was pretty cool. And follow me if you want to find out MMA shit. So, thank you guys for listening, and always, peace and butt grease. Mouse click.